What's up guys, my name is Mark Steiner, and today we're going to be talking about why I decided to buy a Fujifilm camera when I'm a Sony shooter. So if you follow me on Instagram or Twitter, you would have seen that I bought the Fuji X-E4, and I was so excited about this camera. I've always wanted a Fuji camera, and I know for a lot of people that might sound weird, especially me being a Sony shooter, but I've never had like crazy brand loyalty. I just love Sony because they have the best technically spec cameras on the market, and I'm all about those tech specs. But I've always wanted a Fuji camera, and I could never justify buying one. Like, I love seeing all my friends who have Fuji cameras, these amazing photos with these beautiful colors, the small film-like form factor, and I was like, you know what, I would love to have a Fuji camera as my like fun go-to everyday camera, and I could never justify doing that because they were expensive, you know, like I already am invested in the Sony ecosystem, and to drop, you know, $1,000 to $3,000 on a Fujifilm kit that would allow me to be invested in the system in a way that I like was never really an option, because I could spend that money on, you know, upgrading my Sony bodies or buying a new Sony lens. Like, it didn't make sense professionally to invest in something that wasn't really going to be bringing me money back. And so I never got a Fuji camera. But more recently, I found myself not being motivated to go out and shoot, and I was really bummed about that because I would always bring my huge backpack with all my lenses, all my cameras, and I would just be like, all right, even if I'm just going to get coffee with a friend, I'm bringing my entire camera backpack, because you never know, you might find that one shot and it's amazing. And certain times that has come in so clutch. I've gotten some of my favorite photos because I always had a camera on me, and I highly recommend that you do, because that's a great feeling when you can get those once in a lifetime shots because you're prepared even though you weren't expecting to capture some kind of shot like that. But more and more I found myself like, I don't want to lug all this heavy camera gear. I don't want to lug an entire backpack to a small social event with a friend that's going to be intimate, and I'm not really going to be looking to take photos anyway. Sure, there might be some off chance that some amazing thing happens, but even then, am I going to have the opportunity to pull my camera out? Do I have the right lens on there? By the time I switch lenses, get all my settings right, is that shot still going to exist? And it was just like, all right, I'm breaking my back to potentially get a shot, but I found myself never taking. So I just kind of stopped bringing my camera equipment with me to social events, and that was very freeing for me, honestly, because I was like, wow, I'm no longer that photography guy, right? Like, no one's expecting me to take photos, and I am not destroying my posture. So that was really nice, but at the same time I felt really bummed because I was like, I'm not using my camera equipment, I'm not taking the photos that I want to take. And I'd been looking into the Fuji ecosystem for a long time, and again, I never really found a camera that was affordable and did what I wanted. And then I started looking at my friends' Fuji cameras and their photography and the colors and the film simulations, and I just did more and more research, and I'm just like, these Fuji cameras are so beautiful, I would love to do that, right? And so I found myself looking at the Fuji X-E4 with the 27mm pancake lens. That was like the kit that it came in. And for me, this looked like a more affordable X100V. And I was like, this is the perfect camera, because I don't really need to buy any other lenses if I so choose. This 27mm pretty much does everything I want. This unlocks the Fuji system for me, so if I want to borrow a friend's lens, or, you know, like maybe Fuji, if you're watching this, if you send me some lenses, I can test them out on this awesome camera. But for me, it just represented like freedom, right? Like, this is a small, light, compact thing, and it looks beautiful. Let's be real, it looks like a beautiful film camera. But more importantly to me, it motivated me to go out and shoot more. But also, I've noticed when I'm out with my big Sony cameras, right? Like, you get those looks, right? You get those like, oh, do you have a permit? Are you supposed to be here? You're not allowed to shoot here. Like, put the camera away. But with this, no one really takes you seriously, and I love that. And you just look like some tourist who doesn't know what he's doing, he's on holiday, or no one takes you seriously with a camera this size. And I love that because the thing about Fuji cameras, right? They put the same sensor in all of their cameras. So you get the same performance out of this tiny camera as you do the flagship X-T4. And I think that's awesome. So again, this thing is so powerful for its small size and compactness. And no one assumes that you're a professional photographer. And I love that. So there's a lot more freedom because that could be the difference between getting the shot and not getting the shot. And people's presumptions about what camera you're using and their opinion does play a factor into whether or not you get the shot. If you're in someone's face with a full frame camera with the full body grip and the 35mm lens that's massive, they're going to take note. But if you're here with a little tiny baby thing, they're like, "Aw," and you're kind of detached from the situation. You're not putting yourself in there. And I really liked that. And so I started just bringing this camera everywhere with me because it's so light and inconspicuous that no one cares. And I don't even notice it when I'm wearing it. So it's really nice that you just always have that. Another reason why I bought this camera is because I want to document life, right? Like more and more because of this pandemic, I find myself scrolling through photos that I took from the past 3 years. And I'm remembering these awesome memories I had with amazing people. And I'm realizing I don't have that many memories from right now. And I'm like, this is a worldwide pandemic. This is a very interesting time. Like, this is something I want to tell my future kids about, right? And if I don't have photos from this time period, that's kind of a bummer. So I realized I wasn't documenting life. I didn't really have that many memories in photos that I could look back on. And I was like, I want to remember this time. So that's another reason why I got this camera. And I found myself documenting life a lot more. I was capturing intimate moments with some of my best friends when we went to get coffee or go get lunch. Like, those are photos I wouldn't have ever gotten with my big Sony camera because they're very intrusive, right? Like, no one wants to be eating lunch and have a lens shoved in their face. But with this camera, again, you can do that. And I really, really like that. So I decided to get this because 1, it's a great camera. 2, it looks beautiful. But most importantly, for me, it was affordable, right? Like, it was a good bang for buck in the Fuji ecosystem. It had that amazing X-T4 sensor in there. It is a cheaper X100V, but with interchangeable lenses, and I think that's awesome. I could justify the price tag of the X-T4 27mm kit because it just was this nice complete package, and I didn't really see a need for me to buy any other lens, and I didn't really want any other lens because I liked how small and compact this is. It's like a point and shoot. It's beautiful, and I love that. If you start putting other lenses on there, it kind of defeats the purpose of this like great all-around street photography intimate moment camera, because again, then you're going to be running into the same issues I was having with my Sony, that, you know, people know that you're taking the photo, whereas with this one, it's small and compact, no one can tell. And I think that's the beauty of this setup with the 27mm. You don't really need any other lens, and I think that's really fun. Now, that's just my opinion coming as a Sony shooter, getting into the Fuji ecosystem. I'm going to be doing a full review on this camera. This is not a full review. This is just explaining why I decided to buy this camera, because I know I've gotten a lot of messages on Instagram and Twitter, like, why did you buy this camera? You know, the Sony a7 IV is coming out, the a7R5 is coming out. Why did you buy the XE4? It's not even full frame. And that's another thing I wanted to touch on, is that for me, I'm a huge tech nerd, right? I love the specs, I love the tech, I want the best of the best, and that's why I buy Sony cameras. But for me, when it comes to Fuji cameras, I'm not really looking at specs. I actually did not know the full capabilities of this camera when I bought it. All that I wanted out of this camera was a small, intimate street shooter camera that no one was going to take notice when I used it. I needed decent battery life, I wanted those Fuji colors, and that was about it. It was like a very short list of what I want out of a Fuji camera. And when I got it, I started experimenting. I'm like, whoa, this thing is a lot more powerful than I thought it was. Like, this can do 20 frames per second or 30 frames per second with a crop. Like, what? I don't need that power out of this small machine, but that's great. And it also does 4K DCI. Not even my Sony a7S III, which I'm filming on right now, does 4K DCI. Like, Fuji, what? That's awesome that you're putting these features into an entry-level camera. That's great. Like, Sony, take note. I want DCI 4K in my next camera, you know? Like, give me a firmware update so the S3 can get that. Like, I was mind blown by that. But I wasn't buying this camera for the specs. I really just wanted the form factor, those Fuji colors. That's literally it, and those checked all the boxes. Everything else was a massive plus, and I'm still learning about this camera and how awesome it is. But yeah, I think it was great. And then from the difference from full frame to crop, when I was getting into photography, I started on a Nikon D3300, and I noticed how much of a difference going from crop to full frame made for me and my workflow. But again, coming back from Fuji, I'm not trying to get, you know, massive, beautiful, full frame bokeh out of this camera. Like, this is the intimate camera, this is the street shooter camera. Like, that kind of stuff I'd be stopping down to f4, f5, f8 anyway. And then those intimate moments, I don't want creamy, beautiful bokeh, because I'm not trying to capture an artistic moment. I want to capture the moment as my eyes see it, right? Like, if you're talking with a friend, you just see their face and the background is kind of there. You're not like, oh wow, that 1.2 bokeh. No, you're just having a conversation with a friend, you know? And I like that with that crop, you can get closer to your subject and there's less depth of field for the stuff that I'm shooting. Now, because of that, I'm not going to be doing like professional portraits with this setup. That's not what I bought it for. I'm still going to be using my Sony for professional client work or when I want a certain look for my photos. But for this, I like what it does, you know? Like, crop for me is not that big of a deal. I'll go into more detail in the full review of this camera, but yes, there are downsides coming from a full frame going down to a crop, but for me, the crop factor on this camera is one of the things that makes it great. It's just such a fun little camera, and I'm so glad that I got it because I can finally understand why all those Fuji people say all the things they say about Fuji cameras. I've had this for a little over a month now, and the Fuji colors are just, it does what I need it to do. It does more than what I need it to do. So like I said, this is my fun little camera, and I really like it. So that's it for me. Let me know in the comment section down below what you want to see in the full review of this camera. My name is Mark Steiner, and I'll see you next time.